So, yes, an undertaker and an opportunist named Kennard invented the only patented board game, built as a mystical oracle for communicating with spirits and for wholesome entertainment, that outsold Monopoly in any given year. It comes straight from the 19th century seance, says Nick Ricketts, curator at the National Museum of Play in Rochester, NY. Noting that a glow-in-the-dark board and a classic version are still sold today. There's never been another brand board game like it. And I don't think it'll disappear anytime soon. It's always been a board game, a parlor game, but it's always been more than a board game to some people, says Murch. In the 19th century, people had a very different relationship to death than they do today. It was much closer to their everyday experience. Now, we do everything possible in the hope of avoiding old age, let alone engaging in any real thoughts of death. But in the 1800s, people lived only about 50 years. Mothers would have 12 children and 6 of them would die. Their parlor rooms were also their funeral rooms. Perhaps not surprisingly, the story of Weir's origins has a dark side or two hidden in it. There's always something fishy when money is at stake. And by the early 1890s, about 2,000 Weir boards were already being sold a week. William Fuld, who worked for and invested in the Kennard Novelty Company, and eventually gained control of the Weir business after the founder cashed out too early, made millions manufacturing the boards in Baltimore and elsewhere. But it was only after his brother was forced out of the company. Their subsequent lawsuits were no minor squabbles. William's brother, Isaac, became so angry that he had his baby girl exhumed from the Fuld family grave during a cemetery renovation and relocated. The two sides of the family would not speak to each other for 96 years. And, tragically, William Fuld suffered a fatal accident at his Harford Avenue factory, which he claimed in a 1919 Baltimore Sun story was the first time Weir had told him to build it. Be prepared for big business. While overseeing the installation of a flag, an iron railing broke and he fell from the roof of the structure, which is still standing and has been converted into a senior apartment complex. On his deathbed, the coroner's report said a broken rib had pierced his heart. He made his children promise they would never sell Weir to the family, Murch says. Of course, Fuld's family sold out to Parker Brothers, but not for 4 decades, which promptly moved Weir to its base of operations in Salem, MA. In 1967, the first year of being headquartered in a town notorious for its witch trials, Weir sold 2 million boards. By comparison, Monopoly, whose earliest version was invented in 1903, didn't become popular until the Great Depression, when it fulfilled a kind of fantasy escapism. Weir, on the other hand, was a sensation from the start, long before it appeared in its first film, which dates back to the dawn of Hollywood. But Weir's public image has always been complicated. Initially, the mysterious oracle was marketed as a game to liven up a party or encourage a little light-hearted intimacy for romantic, or would-be romantic, couples, who are often shown in early advertisements resting the board on their knees while they sit facing each other, both of their hands on the planchette. Norman Rockwell, who was fond of depicting the revelatory moments of everyday life, painted a well-dressed lover and young woman, seated face to face, playing with a Weir board for the cover of the Saturday Evening Post in 1920. Less well known are the use of the Weir board as inspiration or as an automatic writing device by acclaimed novelists and poets, such as Sylvia Plath, who wrote dialogue over a Weir board, and Pulitzer Prize winner James Merrill. Merrill used notes from Weir consultations in his 560-page epic poem, The Changing Light at Sandover, which included messages from W. B. Yeats, friend Maya Deren, and the Archangel Michael. But over time, the Ouija board's relative innocence, or at least its non-partisan relationship between good and evil, gave way to a more sinister reputation as Hollywood began using it for dark purposes. After The Exorcist, in which actress Linda Blair's character Regan explains to her mother, played by Ellen Burstyn, how she used the family Ouija board to ask questions of Captain Howdy, the demon who eventually takes over her soul, the board's occult status was cemented. Since then, it has appeared in more than 20 films, and countless times in an ever-growing number of paranormal-themed TV shows. Of course, the internet is full of forums about Ouija-related phenomena. More recently, the 2014 film Ouija did so well at the box office that Ouija 2 is already in the works. When it was released last year, the film caused such a dramatic increase in board sales that petitions by evangelical Christian groups to ban Ouija have resurfaced. Catholic.com, a general Catholic apologetics and propaganda website, describes Ouija as far from harmless. Still, the most interesting thing about the Ouija board might be the latest research about it from the University of British Columbia that shows it actually works, just not in the way we might assume.